been No Bias, No Censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is a special New Year's Day edition of Outspoken. Wow, 2025 is, I hope, going to be when the media, independent media, takes over the UK. So we're going to have to be strong, right? But all week we are counting down the 50 worst of 2024 with my favourite members of the Outspoken family. And wow, today, two Alexes who I adore, Substack extraordinaire and former Brexit Party MEP Alex Phillips and the Conservative commentator Alex Armstrong both join me. Please do click to subscribe to our brand new media news source. Turn on the notification bell, then you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. The best way to support Outspoken is by subscribing to a monthly paid membership for access to the uncancelled after show, which returns Monday to Friday. In just a couple of weeks, my exclusive reporting, columns, access to our live chats on the Substack app, and a chance to join a thriving community. Most importantly, it is a safe space, free of censorship. Your support from just £5 a month gives you that 30 minutes of extra content on weekdays, but allows me to continue making this independent daily news show. But don't worry, you can sign up completely for free as well, because it's much, much more important that I have your support as part of the Outspoken community. But now, let's go. Alex Armstrong, Alex Phillips, Happy New Year. And Mr. Armstrong,
Happy New Year.
You're just out of bed. I don't even want to know what you got up to last night.
It's always the worst feeling in the world, isn't it? When you're rushing out of bed and you're like, what have I done?
Alex Phillips, what's your New Year resolution?
Right. Well, New Year's resolution, I don't really know, actually. I think to stop giving a fuck. I mean, I did that halfway
well, you started in the right place.
I'm going to really force it home.
Perfect way for us to kick off 2025. You don't get that on the MSM. What about you, Armstrong? I'm just going to have to call you Armstrong today, I'm afraid.
I think Alex has just nailed it. I mean, I don't know how I can beat that one for a New Year's resolution, frankly.
So my usual one about, eating less and losing weight feels a bit ridiculous. I'm just not going to give a damn. Okay,
don't bother, Dan.
You know how this works. The countdown is on. We are at number 30. And let's kick off with the attacks on Nigel Farage. Two physical attacks on the Reform UK leader as he was campaigning during the general election campaign. And this was just days before the assassination attempt on Donald Trump stateside. Alex Phillips, look, you have been by Farage's side during a lot of his early campaigns, because, of course, you were such a big part of UKIP and then the Brexit Party too. What infuriates me is that there's a feeling with Nigel that this is all a joke. That the mainstream media and liberal elite almost seem to celebrate this. Do you remember when Joe Brand joked about him having battery acid poured all over him?
Right. He's a rare thing in a politician, which is he's one of the very few that actually likes to go out and meet the people. Most of them will just stand there in a high-vis jacket and a hard hat in some sort of factory with a load of paid up members holding placards behind them. He actually goes and integrates and mingles with the real people and puts himself at great risk doing it. I was with him. I think one of the worst attacks I've ever seen was back in the UKIP days when Hope Not Hate busts a load of people to his local pub in the village where he lived. And I was there, and his children had to run and hide. They were youngsters at the time. But the thing is, you know, the left wing do this, don't they? They demonize, use the most hyperbolic rhetoric about people from the right, that all of a sudden it feels like a moral imperative to verbally lash out or even physically lash out against them. And then before you know it, they're adopting exactly the same words and phrases because they know that's what the people want to hear. You know, it's amazing listening to the Labour Party's change in tone on immigration. Once upon a time, you weren't even able to say, we want to leave the EU without being called a screaming racist. Well, we've done that. Nigel was the one who set the precedent in talking about uncontrolled migratory flows and was called a monster. And now other political parties are adopting it because he was right all along.
Very, very true. And Alex Armstrong, what there is no doubt about is that Nigel Farage is the most under threat politician in the UK. And again,
100%.
This year, we've seen the mainstream media just dismiss that and constantly hector him about why he's not doing face-to-face constituents meetings in Clacton. And it is because he is under physical threat.
Yeah, and it's not just Nigel, actually. Reform MPs in general are having the most attacks of any politicians currently. I mean, we saw the death threat sent to Lee Anderson just come out the other day. The police arrested the guy who'd sent those death threats to Lee, and then they let him off scot-free. When someone sent death threats to Ed Miliband, they've banged him up in prison. So there's clearly two-tier justice throughout the system. Reform are the biggest threat to the establishment, and they'll do anything they can to scare them out of their jobs and to make sure that people know if you're part of that party, then you're not protected by the establishment. Now, poor Nigel has endured more abuse than any politician I can remember in modern history. And look, I know there's been some terrible things happen to politicians, but as Alex Phillips just absolutely nailed it and said, you know, it seems acceptable by the left to laugh and mock Nigel when he comes under threat. When other MPs have the same done to them, well, we're told that that's a completely abhorrent thing. Well, where's the sensibility here? Well, why can't we say that attacking all politicians is a terrible thing? As I've always said, we should never put our MPs under threat. We should never be okay with things being thrown at them. But again, Dan, it's two-tier justice in Britain. You know what it's like.
Of course it is. And we know that politicians on both sides of the spectrum are under threat. And this is real because look at Joe Cox, look at David Ames, God rest both their souls. But I did find it extraordinary that during the campaign for the US presidency this year, it was just forgotten by the mainstream media. They chose to forget it. It was like, oh no, Trump wasn't nearly assassinated. Oh no, there wasn't another attempt on his life. They just moved on. But let's move on in our countdown now to number 29. And I'm going to specifically target the Daily Mail here because over the course of the election campaign, and I think they will come to regret this, they very dishonestly branded Reform UK as far right. I explained the situation on TikTok.
The Daily Mail thinks that you are far right for voting for Nigel Farage and Reform UK. Well, I say, no, you're just right. This is Outspoken, Dan. With less than 2 weeks to go before the UK general election, it's fascinating, actually quite joyful, to see the mainstream media go into an utter meltdown about the fact that there's a party rising up that doesn't represent the establishment and everything that we have come to view as the failure of Westminster. But I'm very shocked by this new strategy by the Mail. I worked there for 2 years. I thought they believed in freedom of choice, and I thought they believed in stopping the illegal flow of migrants into the country and low taxes too. But now they've made this official decision to start describing Nigel and Reform UK as far right. Not only is that dangerous misinformation, as the BBC might call it, I think they're betraying their thousands and thousands of readers.
Apologies for the shirt, but by the way, I was in Florida and it was the middle of summer. But Alex Phillips, I think this will come and boomerang very badly on the Daily Mail. They thought that they could keep playing this trick of deriding Reform UK. It's something, as you know, being head of the media operations for UKIP, that you've seen them done in the past. But I think this time they made a big mistake and they alienated a huge amount of their readers.
Well, yeah, I want to question what the deal was they had with the Labour Party in terms of access and coverage, because we also know that publications like the Daily Mail have been sitting on a story about Sir Keir Starmer for a long time.
Yes.
So you've really got to ask questions about the editor and the relationship with Number 10. But the thing is, 2024 was the year that everything got called far right so much that it doesn't even mean anything anymore. It's ridiculous. When everyone was called far right thugs after the Southport protests, and all of a sudden it hashtagged and trended all over social media. Well, I'm a far right thug. Every single populist party, which is also used as a pejorative term across Europe, i.e. any party that believes in the nation state and controlling borders, is now called far right. And yet what is so alarming is when you actually look at, I read this incredible study done by Rutgers University in America. They looked at people who had had diversity training and then set them various scenarios upon which to comment that people who have had diversity training, people who have had all of that nonsense sort of, programmed into them, are actually the ones who hold authoritarian beliefs. The far right are the people calling other people the far right. And it's amazing how they still get away with it.
Alex Armstrong, do you agree?
I couldn't agree more. So I was laughing there because it feels so real that I'm sure Alex, you, Dan, everyone's had someone call them far right in the last couple of years. And I don't think it's something I ever expected to be called my entire life, because when I grew up, and what I was taught in school is far right is akin to Nazism, which is akin to fascism. And that's another word I've heard being thrown around quite a lot the last few years, is fascist. Well, I really, really wish these loon lefties would get a dictionary and look up the definition of fascism, because it's another buzzword we've just completely destroyed. Now, the left proclaim to be these torchbearers of liberty, but actually all they want to do is lock you up and shut you down and censor you. They can't. The funny thing about it all, Dan, as I'm sure your viewers will agree, is they cannot see the irony in their message. They cannot see the fact that they're the ones who are closer to the far right than we are. All we're asking for is to be able to say what we want to say under free speech laws, freedom of expression laws. And yet this year, more than any year in my life, I have been scared to be locked up for my opinions. Who is the far right again, Dan? Who is the far right? Is it the people on this side trying to speak the truth, or is it the people on the left trying to lock us up for speaking the truth?
Well, I know we saw what happened
I think it's
with
pretty
Alison
obvious.
Pearson, didn't we? We saw what happened with Lucy Connolly, the wife of the Conservative councillor. But I just think that the Daily Mail now have really pushed themselves into a corner, because how can they keep on supporting this Conservative Party with what's going on? It's really, really fascinating. But let's move on to number 28 on the worst of 2024. And it's the horrifying moment, that Keir Starmer, Slippery Starmer, Two-Tier Keir, refuses to meet any locals after the Southport massacre. Watch.
How many more children have died in our streets, Prime Minister? How many more children? How many more children, Prime Minister? Are we going to do something? Time to change, Starmer. Come on, it's needed. How many more children? Is it mine next? Stand up for our children. Bye-bye.
Now, Alex Phillips, I have a theory on this. I think this is why Starmer cracked down so hard and implemented his two-tier justice, because he was aware of the anger, the visceral anger when he went to visit Southport. And you know, there is this narrative that has developed in the mainstream media that, oh, all of these far-right thugs were shipped into the area. Not in that case. They were locals. They were people who knew children in that Taylor Swift dance class, and they were utterly devastated that the Prime Minister went to their community and then refused to speak to them.
Yeah, you know, Dan, we are in a mess, not just in the UK, but across the whole of the West. Politicians, successive governments now have gone for open borders in the hope that it will sort of adapt to a form of global socialism, which no one wanted. And we have allowed some very dangerous people with very poisonous and toxic attitudes to take root within our communities. And we're going to see a lot more terror attacks as a result. People know what went on in Southport. They knew from the beginning. You know when someone is going to go and murder little girls, that is a problem, and you can assume why. Now, what's fascinating, of course, is the terror charge was brought much later. They would have known or assumed that he had connections to terrorism at the time of the event. Without doubt, Number 10 would have been briefed when they had found ricin in that man's bedroom. And it has been a cover-up. Now, I think that part of what happened, and call me cynical, but I think the truth is going to come out in 2025. I think when Donald Trump is inaugurated as president and Elon Musk has protection as part of the American government, I think truth is going to start coming out on this. Let's see. But it's quite clear to me that at the very least, events were choreographed. Things were covered up and kept from public view. And then these protests suddenly escalated into riots, suddenly. And we were told, weren't we, that there were going to be hundreds more, which then got all these sort of coordinated mobs out with their Socialist Workers' Party placards magically churned out overnight from printing presses up and down the country. And then, of course, we had the Judge Judy trials, the show trials, where people were thrown in prison for social media posts. And then after all of this has happened, then the truth comes out, at which point, basically, people are too scared to speak. They're too scared to act. I believe it was deliberately choreographed. Now, in terms of the protests and the escalation into riots, I don't know, but one assumes they could easily have been infiltrated by, let's say, professional rioters. Whether they belong to foreign countries, we know this is the sort of way that Russia and Iran like to play games in other countries, or whether perhaps they even belong to our own country. I don't know. That might sound like a weird allegation, but something is very off. We know that the sequence of events after that horrific stabbing has been very deliberately curated.
Absolutely. To shut us up. And Alex, I don't care if people throw around the conspiracy theorist term. I said it at the time. I believe that the so-called riots were infiltrated by Antifa. There is lots of evidence to suggest that was the case. So I don't disagree with anything that you laid out there, because the argument is it did work. People are now terrified to protest, because so many protesters, and they were genuine protesters, ended up being locked up. Alex Armstrong, you pointed out another incident earlier this year when Starmer was heckled. So this is becoming quite commonplace for a prime minister who apparently won in a landslide.
I don't know. In my head, I mean, I still feel like this election hasn't happened, because the British public did not want in their blood this man to be prime minister. And he is, of course, now the most unpopular prime minister who survived. I mean, we've got to take Liz Truss out of the equation here, because the equation is that he survived more than 30 days. But he is the most unpopular prime minister in history in the fastest period of time possible. It's been 4 months. The public have already signed a petition of 2.5 million people. We knew it wouldn't do anything, but that's how incensed they are. And they feel that something is off in their bones. They feel something is going wrong in the country. Within the first few weeks of him being prime minister, he was pulling all of these insane levers to lock people up for speaking the truth and for going out and protesting, and for some cases just being present at a protest. What kind of Orwellian nightmare of a prime minister thinks that keeping the courts open for 24 hours a day to prosecute 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and just young people who are fed up is acceptable, is what Britain is all about? This is not the country that people want to live in. We want to live in a democracy. We want to live in a country where you're allowed to use your voice. You're allowed to speak freely. And what Southport has done is it's exposed this massive underbelly of the British establishment, of the bureaucracy, of the power that they have to take you down, the individual man. I think up until this point, the establishment have done a really good job of hiding it, of making you believe that you are in power and making you believe that you are untouchable as a citizen of this country. Well, actually, now you know that the police can come knocking on your door because you want to talk about grooming gangs. You want to talk about what happened in Southport. They will come for you if they want to. And that's the reality, Dan, is that this quivering Starmer has been so scared by the public that actually Southport has revealed his true hand, and the establishment's true hand, probably far sooner than they'd like to.
Totalitarian, absolutely. Speaking of authoritarian, at number 27 on the list of the worst of 2024, Alist Campbell. You know the guy that led us into an illegal war and still roams free, including in the BBC studios? He suggested that Douglas Murray should be sent to jail. Watch.
Very angry mobs. I just see today, a Muslim group, sort of doing a boundary policing thing in their area of chanting Allahu Akbar and defend the mosque. The worst thing for me is exactly what I said would happen, and the reason I wrote The Strange Death of Europe and the reason I banged on about this for years beforehand was I said it is so obvious what is going to happen. I was so angry watching it when it could have been stopped.
Yeah, it sucks to be right about something so bad.
Now, I would say very sensible interview from Douglas Murray, right? Certainly not something that I would view as inciting racial hatred or reporting anything inaccurate, which can apparently now get you arrested. But look at what Alist Campbell had to say. Now, Alist Campbell, of course, the man whose fake news dossier helped send the UK into an illegal war, he posted on X, "Think Met Police UK," copying them in, "might want to take a look at this book plug." So there we have Alist Campbell now using this new draconian regime, the leadership being provided by authoritarian Starmer, Stephen Barrett, to try and get Douglas Murray arrested for saying that. I mean, goodness me. Yeah. Alex Phillips, it does show you how the left think, though, right? Met Police, go and investigate Douglas Murray for speaking the truth. Don't go and investigate the rapists or the muggers or the burglars or the wannabe terrorists. Go and investigate Douglas Murray. Now, the fact that it comes from Alist Campbell, well, come on.
Well, it ties back to what I was saying about the DEI lot, the pro-diversity lot, the authoritarian left in this country. It's amazing that during the whole time of the riots, how many people suddenly salivated with glee, were rabid with intent on putting @Met Police on everybody's post. Everybody wanted to shop everybody else, that the left just wanted everyone on the right wing to be sent to prison, to be thrown off Twitter, to be banned, to be censored, to be punished. They have this horrible punitive mindset, and Alist Campbell's like the king of the castle, isn't it? This is the man who, when it came to the dodgy dossier, turned around and said to the BBC and all the other sort of journalists, oh, it was Professor David Kelly, and that man was found hanging from a tree. So Alist Campbell has blood on his hands in a very real sense, in a personal sense, with one man's life. And when it comes to loads of innocent people in another country that was bombed, the man is disgusting. He's an ex-alcoholic. He's a narcissist. He's a sociopath. He once almost punched me in the face on Newsnight because he couldn't win an argument. And yet the BBC will roll him out in the studios every 5 seconds as if he's the second coming of Jesus Christ. The left get away with so much. And you can see this is now why they are foam flecked with absolute intent on going after political dissent, going after voices of opposition with a sort of hunger that Hitler would be proud of. It worries me, frankly. And this whole little trend they've got of at-net police, this person, at-net police, that person. We actually are now rubbing shoulders and walking side by side with true authoritarians, the likes of which we haven't seen in Europe for almost 100 years, and we need to wake up to that.
It is utterly sinister, Alex Armstrong.
Yeah, and I think Alex nailed it. We've been living with it for a while, and I think now the emboldenment with the Labour victory has meant these people feel like we've got our lawyer in charge that's of two-tier care. We've got Labour in charge, so our values have been vindicated. We're going to weaponize. And it was only after the election I really saw them going into this direction. I really saw them going for this at-Met police, because I had a ton of them. I actually was prolifically creating memes to make light of the situation of the rioting in the country and to just, maybe give people a little bit of comic relief on the right. And I had quite a large should I say legal account? He's a lawyer, quite a large lawyer who's got hundreds of thousands of followers, tagging the Attorney General in my posts about Keir Starmer burning the Magna Carta. I was like, are you having a laugh? It's a joke. Get over yourself. But they have become so emboldened and Alex, it's so punitive of their Puritan moral grandstanding. One of the only great things that's happened in the last few months is that this Labour Party has unravelled quicker than a garnish of wool in a hurricane. And I'm so happy to see them finally this moral high ground they've been sitting on be unraveled in front of them. It hasn't stopped the obviously at-Met police people, but what it has done is tell the rest of us in the country that no, they don't have their act together. No, they aren't ready to govern. Actually, this is a circus and the clowns are running it. So I think people are taking great, maybe just feeling that there's maybe some light at the end of the tunnel, that this government might not last forever. And I really hope for all of our sakes that it doesn't.
Alex, I'd actually forgotten about that brilliant clash between yourself and Alist Campbell on Newsnight. But he was utterly vile to you, wasn't he? That was the thing. It was personal.
Right. And they don't, if that was, can you imagine if Nigel Farage had lost his temper and was saying, shut up, dear, and then swinging his arm towards a left-wing commentator, he would be banned from all television programmes ever. And yet Alist Campbell, they continue to roll out the red carpet. And this is despite all the staff at Newsnight after that event coming and comforting me, going, well, he can be like this. Well, are you okay? They were all shaken by it as well, because what you don't see as the camera pans round, and so we go out of shot, is how physical it almost gets and how sort of physically threatening he was towards me. And I'm not like a Me Too movement. I was really scared. I was scared. I actually thought he was going to throw a punch at me, and so did the producers. And yet they will still have him back on. And, but talking, Alex Armstrong there, talking about how, they are trying to get their own way. They've got the Labour Party in charge. They think they can come after us. This is why the New Year's resolution for everybody is don't give a fuck. Say what you want to say. They can't come after every last man, woman and child. We've got to not go along with it.
Yes.
We've got to turn around and say, I'm saying what I want. I'm going to stand up for my rights. I'm going to stand up for my freedoms. Come and get me.
Yes.
Try. You try and come up.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I couldn't agree more. Speaking of the mainstream media, at number 26 on the list of the worst of 2024, Channel 4 uses an actor in its bombshell election expose of Reform UK.
Spotted, this was unbelievable. This was an actor who specialises in rough voices and specialises in secret filming. And we now have a written statement, Dan, from someone who was in the car with the filmer and this actor. And the two of those people were in deep discussion at the beginning of the rendezvous of the volunteers. So they were there together working out how they were going to do it. This thing was the greatest stitch-up in modern electoral times.
Alex Armstrong, what did you make of this?
I was really shocked. I actually sorry. I think I was talking about the wrong person there. Sorry. I was really shocked by this, Dan, and I actually emailed someone at Reform when I first saw the footage leak, and I was like, this doesn't actually remind me of people who I've met at Reform. This is not my experience of working with Reform UK party members and activists, and it all felt a little bit odd. And when the news broke that this might be an actor, and it was circulating on Twitter, there were some people doing some great individual investigations on Twitter about who these people are, where they've come from. And of course, we found his, there's like some sort of actors page where people can go and, sign up to be extras and things like that. And this guy had his own page on there. And it was quite obvious that the man was not in a constituency where he lived, was putting on a voice that was not naturally his own voice, and then pretended to be a Reform Party activist, and Channel 4 just so happened to be filming him. I mean, what are the chances, Dan? What are the chances, right? So I was absolutely gobsmacked. And only the mainstream media would be so bold to attack a political party, to attack our democracy in the weeks in the run-up to an election. Only they would be so bold to do it. And there was no accusations of racism and anything else in parts of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, even though any of us who have worked in politics know that it's rife in both of those parties. It was, of course, going after Reform, who was surging in the polls. I think at this point we were seeing Reform hit 17 to 20%, and they were doing everything they could to stop Nigel Farage. And in my opinion, my honest opinion, I know that there's no evidence for this, but my honest opinion was this man was a paid actor. I don't believe he represents Reform, and I think this was a shoddy attempt, like the whole Farage is best mates with Putin, is a Putin sympathizer, a shoddy attempt to shut down Reform UK before an election victory.
And it's funny, isn't it? Channel 4 weren't going undercover with any of the pro-Hamas candidates, were they? Now, Alex Phillips, just before I get you to weigh in, let's take a little look at some of this Channel 4 expose.
Offensive language, including this canvasser saying people seeking asylum should be shot.
Get the young recruits there, with guns on the beach, target practice, to shoot them.
Racist language was repeatedly used, here directed at the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
We got him. What's good is he?
And homophobia from Farage's inner circle.
You see that degenerate flag on the front bonnet? What the old Bill doing promoting that crap?
Now, Alex Phillips, in terms of that last comment, I have absolutely no problem with it. Why should the Met Police be flying the what's it called, the Pride Progress flag, which, let's be honest, encourages the mutilation of children?
Yeah, I mean, look, Channel 4 have got such past form in this. I've been stung by Channel 4. The thing is with Channel 4, they make up a story and then they try and evidence it, rather than what a journalist should do is get evidence and then see if there's a story there. They invented this whole narrative that I worked for Cambridge Analytica, just as they invented with Carol Cadwallader and The Observer, this whole narrative that Cambridge Analytica worked on Brexit, and Cambridge Analytica worked on Trump, and Cambridge Analytica was somehow using personal data to bend people's minds. First of all, Cambridge Analytica worked on the cruise campaign. They didn't work for Vote Leave or Leave.eu. And when I was working over in Kenya, I was a consultant for SCL Laboratories, which was a precursor to what later became Cambridge Analytica. But that's a bit like saying, because I don't know, Sainsbury's have bought a particular company, Argos or whatever, and I worked for Argos, I was working for Sainsbury's. I mean, I wasn't. But they invent stuff, and when they followed me around, they sort of tried to creep around Parliament, tracking me everywhere, pretending they were doing an interview about something completely different. They're so corrupt. I cannot believe this news channel is allowed to continue to exist. But this is the thing, right? You know, newspapers like News of the World were shut down. Some would say rightly so, with phone tapping and hacking. But Channel 4 get away with murder. They tell outright lies. They deliberately stage things. They do these sort of setup traps with undercover filming, using actors. And this is not what a news organization does, right? This is not news. They should not be receiving any money from the license fee, which I understand, I think the news operation still does. Frankly, they should be taken off air. They're getting away with things because why? They're the left wing. It's that simple.
Yep.
No one else could do what they do.
Couldn't agree more. And if they believe that there's some sort of market for their shoddy journalism, then fine. Go and try and survive in the commercial sector. See if people will pay for it. But the fact that they are a government-owned broadcaster is a joke.
Yeah.
But let's move on now to number 25 in our countdown of the worst of 2024. And it was that disastrous Jaguar woke rebrand. Alex Armstrong, I think they should maybe change their tagline from delete ordinary to delete profits.
I think you're right, Dan. The funny thing is that they've made this out to be like, oh, we're doing something so bold, so different. I've seen this a billion times at those Pride marches. I mean, this is nothing unique, so to speak. This is just them having a massive piece of work that is essentially there to shock you, to get you talking about it. And I believe it's achieved its goal in getting people to speak about Jaguar. But as Elon Musk said, do you even sell cars? Because there's not a single car in this advertisement. It's absolutely batshit bonkers. It really is. It's nonsense level business that has gone mad, that has said, right, our business is dying. How can we shock one of the most beautiful and well-respected British brands in the world? How can we utterly destroy it? And of course, if you've seen the creative director of Jaguar Land Rover, you'll know why. The guy is a abhorrid left-wing woke ideology up to his eyeballs who wants to change the world and indoctrinate people into his way of thinking. And you'll see exactly why Jaguar is never going to exist again in a few years' time. And it's going to be people like him who's put that business's head on a guillotine, in my opinion, Dan. It's absolutely shocking.
Well, I mean, he was straight from Woke Central casting. Have a listen to how he tried to sell Jaguar at the Attitude Awards, dressed like he thought he was performing at the Eurovision Song Contest.
And at Jaguar, we're passionate about our people, and we're committed to fostering a diverse, inclusive, and unified culture that is representative not only of the people who use our products, but in a society in which we all live. A culture where our employees can bring their authentic selves to work. And we're on a transformative journey of our own, driven by a belief in diversity, inclusion, creativity, policy, and most importantly, action. We've established over 15 DEI groups, such as Pride, who are here tonight in the back. Thank you guys for coming. Women in Engineering and Neurodiversity Matters. We've launched major policy revisions, such as transitioning at work, to drive equity and support for our communities, embracing individuality as our superpower.
Alex Phillips, your response?
Fuck off. I mean, it's disgusting, isn't it? It's disgusting. It was like the bingo card of fostering equity, inclusion, diversity. Do you know what? Here's some news for all the freakazoids out there and people in the advert. The vast majority of human beings on this planet aren't gender fluid. They don't have ambiguous, identities. They're just normal fucking people, right? The vast majority of people on this planet also, and this isn't meant to be a homophobic comment, are also straight. That is just how it's worked out in the numbers. And the vast majority of people in the United Kingdom, for which Jaguar is, once upon a time, the crown jewel in our automotive industry, are also white. Okay? I'm sorry if that upsets people. That's just the bloody truth. So who are they trying to target? Why are they constantly trying to erase what the majority of people are, what the majority of people want, what the majority of people respond to? I'm sick to death of these companies employing weirdos like him, who all they can do is churn out a word soup of absolute fucking nonsense, and then they completely destroy a brand that once upon a time we were proud of and we should be proud of. It actually makes me sick to the stomach.
Yeah.
Again, New Year's resolution. No. Over.
No.
I'm just
You're done with
gone.
it. You're done with it. Yeah.
Game.
I mean, I find the delete ordinary phrase actually so offensive. It's like, what's wrong with being ordinary? Don't people want to be ordinary? And in fact, when it comes to gay men, J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect of the US, spoke about the normal gays during the election campaign. And actually, I thought that's what we wanted as gay men, Alex. We wanted to be accepted. We wanted to be ordinary. Like, being ordinary is okay, right?
What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? The world is...
You have to be made out to be a freak and a weirdo with a bad hairstyle who looks mentally ill.
It's the opposite of what we fought for, I would argue.
But this is so true. This is so true, right? In my generation, we were brought up with this whole massive campaign called "Ditch the Label." It meant you don't put labels on everything; that everyone is accepted for who they are. But that also means you're accepted for just being a normal human being. It now feels like, in order to be accepted into society, to be part of this weird little cabal of freaks who are starting to run businesses, clearly, that you have to be completely outrageous. You must be labeled. You must have pronouns. You must be transitioning or something. Like, what was wrong with people? The world is made up of ordinary folk who just want to get on with their lives without being told that they're horrible people, without being told that they're racist, they're fascist, that they're xenophobic, that they're Islamophobic, all these phobias and isms. They just want to get on with their lives. Stop shoving LGBT woke nonsense down their throat. Gay people just want to get on with their lives. The vast majority of them do, should I say, without having any conflict with anyone else. They just want a normal life.
Yeah. And without
depriving them of
trying
it.
to change society and change great brands. Absolutely. But let's move on to number 24 on the list of the worst of 2024. And this is the off-communists, the UK government censor, trying to destroy financially my former colleague at GB News, Mark Stein. So Stein has been charged £50,000 in a court-ordered payment. He has been told he has to make this payment within 4 days after taking the UK's evil state censor to court. Now, this actually gets worse, because the off-communists are demanding £144,959.28 in total. That is utterly sick, given that this is an organisation trying to take away our free speech that shouldn't even exist. And I mean, after that broadcast, Alex, we managed to raise the money that Mark needed, but that is just the first payment being demanded by the off-communists. It was £54,000. They actually want well over £100,000 in total.
It's mental, isn't it? This is just, it's out of control. And all of this stuff always ties back to the bloody vaccine that you weren't allowed to criticise. Everyone had to have it. I mean, that was one of the biggest forms of blackmail I've ever seen. We're now learning, again, incrementally, because there's a big cover-up, that loads of people probably didn't need that vaccine. They've actually been actively harmed by it. But at the time, if you tried to say anything about this sort of sinister social political coercion to having an untested jab, you were a criminal. And this is just frankly abhorrent. Again, the same Ofcom who are fining Mark Stein all of that money will let Channel 4 continue to use actors and, you know, come up with fake storylines and play them out in some sort of Amdram reinterpretation of the news. I'm actually for there being a regulator, okay, in many respects when it comes to broadcasting, because it is there to make sure that people don't lie. The problem is, of course, is audiences are being lied to and are being deceived, and it's when people are trying to speak the truth that the regulator suddenly snaps into action.
Alex Armstrong, even GB News decided to take the off-communists to court in 2024.
Yeah, look, I think this next year is going to be critical for freedom of speech across the country. I think we're going to see this rebellion pick up pace. I'm glad that GB News have found the backbone and are deciding, you know what, we're not going to be shut up. We're not going to be fined for doing something that BBC Question Time does almost, you know, every month up into an election. They have one of the party leaders on there and they questioned them. And that whole thing with Rishi Sunak is an absolute joke that they're finding them for it. When you watch the show back, the Prime Minister was very much challenged on his views. He wasn't left unchallenged. But when it comes to individual stars, this is where it starts to worry me. Because I know, Dan, of course, you've had a situation with GB News where you've been cancelled and taken off air. And I think big organizations and media organizations in general must find the will and their own backbone and protect the people on their channel, because it's utterly critical that there is a broader group of people that are going to stand up with big platforms and can utilize all different forms of media, not just online, but on the telly as well, and say, actually, this is wrong. We mustn't allow this to happen. We are just questioning the truth. We're just questioning the facts that you've been presenting us. There's the so-called government truth, as I like to call it. And if we're not allowed to do that, then you might as well shut down the television and every streaming service in the country and just have the BBC on, because that's what will be left at the end of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with all of that. I guess the one caveat I would say is that, unfortunately, GB News thought that if it fed the beast, so it was like, let's chuck Mark Stein under the bus. Okay, now we'll chuck Lawrence Fox under the bus. Okay, yep, we'll chuck Dan under the bus too. They thought it would show to the off-communists that they were taking them seriously. But unfortunately, all it did was embolden the off-communists, and they haven't gone away. But look, stand by. My two brilliant Alexes, Alex Phillips, Alex Armstrong. The countdown continues in just 1 minute, including Megan Markle's extraordinary confrontation with the Vice President of Colombia. But first, we've been told our whole lives that wrinkle creams were the easiest way to look younger. Now one doctor says that's nothing but old news. According to Dr. John Lake, the world-renowned Beverly Hills beauty expert, most wrinkle fixes on the market are nothing but glorified moisturizers. He says they hardly make a dent on your appearance, and some can even be harmful to your skin. Recently, Dr. Lake has focused his attention away from mainstream cosmetic practices. Why? So he can pursue a revolutionary anti-aging breakthrough, one that some experts say could empty the wallets of the cosmetic industry. It's almost like Photoshop for your face. You may even be mad after seeing how easy it is to visibly erase your wrinkles from view. That's what Lake told reporters. His personal clients have dubbed his new do-it-yourself technique the age rewinder method because it can take years or even decades off your appearance in under 2 minutes. In light of this amazing breakthrough, Dr. Lake has released a step-by-step video to the public, free and uninterrupted, where he outlines exactly how to use this simple solution from home. He says if this even helps one person look younger or feel more confident, I'll be thrilled knowing I helped. The video has since gone viral. At first, it was shared by users on Facebook, but since then it's racked up over 2.3 million views and counting. So far, the comments and feedback have been outstanding, with thousands of women reporting they look decades younger. One viewer even commented, "Best results of anything I've used. I can't believe how well this works. I'll never stop using this. I don't understand how it works, but the results are great. Thank you." So you can find out more about this yourself right now. Go to bhmd1.com/outspoken or click on the link in the description box below. So that's bhmd1.com/outspoken. Now, there is one thing Dr. Lake asks from his viewers. If watching this video helps you look and feel younger than you have in years, then please share this video with your friends and loved ones. Together, we have the power to help as many women reclaim a youthful look as possible. So go watch the video, bhmd1.com/outspoken right now, or just click on the description box below. The link is there. But now, back to the show. And Megan Markle was confronted in the most extraordinary way by the Vice President of Colombia when the Duchess of Sussex decided to get a little bit too close to her husband. Now, what was so fascinating about this is the Colombian VP, Marquez, had been so keen for Megan to come to her country. She thought this was going to be really great promotion for Colombia. Instead, she quite quickly realized the truth about Murky Meg. Watch this extraordinary footage, captured, of course, not by the mainstream media, but by a citizen journalist in the room. I'll talk you through it. Is Meghan approaching the vice president's husband? She goes in for the kiss, and then you see the vice president seems to almost lunge at her, and Harry steps in immediately, grabs Meghan's hand, but certainly there's been something going on. So there you can see Meghan walks in, gives the hug, boom, boom. And we've paused in that moment where Harry actually puts his hand in Angela, seemingly to get involved. Now, of course, we don't know what was said. We don't know what else has gone on between these two because, of course, there was lots of dancing and that sort of thing. And we should absolutely stress that we are not suggesting that there was anything inappropriate. However, don't you find it bizarre that citizen journalists have found this incredible piece of footage, yet no one in the mainstream media has even asked the question? And Alex Armstrong, they didn't ask the question. But Francia Marquez went from being the most famous member of the Sussex squad to one of Meghan's enemies after spending just a couple of days in her presence. What went on?
Oh, who knows, Dan? Who knows? I daren't speculate these days. I might be end up in one of those two-tier care prison cells. I'm sure Meghan Markle colludes with him regularly, and they might have a hit list together. But anyone who spends time with this woman seems to have an immediate dislike for her. She has got a list of enemies as long as the original Magna Carta. Honestly, it must be absolutely astonishing. The rumors about her that she's this, wicked person that constantly demands. Her staff, when she did live in the royal household, were constantly leaking because they couldn't stand her. And it's some sort of unprecedented stuff. But what we've heard recently is that Harry's trying to get back into the royal circle, and I don't know, and I don't think Brits are going to have this woman back. I don't think they're going to have her back. And I don't think the royal family are going to want her back because her reputation precedes her now. The Americans have seen her. This is one of the great things about this year is that the Americans have finally realized Meghan Markle isn't very great. She's awful. Even South Park have done a whole episode on them and Harry, which is brilliant. But I think this is the year that Meghan Markle really lost her spark with the Americans. We realized it a long time ago. But I think now it's all over, Dan, for Meghan Markle.
Alex Phillips, okay, can we help? Look, let's feel charitable, right? It's the start of the year. You are in a past life one of those people behind the scenes who works on public figures' image and how to rehabilitate them and how to make them popular. Is there anything that Meghan Markle can do to turn this around?
Well, I don't know. The problem is, okay, that we understand so much from humans by the way they talk when they're natural, by their body language, by their facial expressions. I mean, most of our communication is actually non-verbal. And the problem with Meghan Markle is she's constantly in actress mode, isn't she? Because she's clearly a narcissist. She's got borderline personality disorder. She is wired up sociopathically. She's a beautiful woman. She's an intelligent woman, but she couldn't feign authentic compassion or empathy if she tried, because I doubt she actually experiences it. So, you know, in many respects, she's perfect for politics. Maybe she should put her money where her mouth is and do what she said she'd do a long time ago and join the Democrats and try and run for office, because I'm sure she'd actually make quite a convincing politician. But everything she's done otherwise to try and come across, you know, the doe-eyed, beaming princess, constantly holding Harry's hand and putting her hand on his chest and looking up at him with that vulnerable little "I love him" face. I heard in that relationship, and I don't know how true this may be, I heard that he's the one who might be the lesser party, who's the one who's probably a bit vulnerable, really. I won't say much more than that. You know, she should have stuck with acting, because she's an actress. She's constantly in acting mode, but she needs to give up on trying to be the people's princess. That ship has sailed.
What was so interesting, Alex Armstrong, though, is that the Democrats actually didn't want anything to do with her during this election campaign. In 2020, I guess her stock was still considered relatively high in America, and she was certainly a public proponent of Joe Biden, but total radio silence during this election campaign.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised, actually, Dan, because, I mean, they had enough on their hands with Kamala Harris as it was. And unlike Meghan, Kamala seriously cannot act at all, because I think she would have, well, just have a look at her presidential performance. It was absolutely abysmal. The woman couldn't get her words out in coherent sentences, let alone be able to read a script. But Meghan Markle has become a toxic public figure. We've seen celebrities distance themselves from the Markles. I mean, famously, Beyonce, allegedly, has distanced herself from Meghan Markle. So there's got to be truth behind these rumors,
yeah, even Oprah,
that she's not a very nice person.
Even Oprah, and of course, 2024 was the year that The Hollywood Reporter described Meghan as a dictator in high heels and backed up all of the reports that people like me had made during her time in the royal family. So the idea that this was some sort of cultural thing, which Meghan always tried to justify her behavior by saying, oh, they just don't understand me, I'm from Hollywood, we have different standards in Hollywood. Absolutely not true, because the Hollywood Reporter, which is a real lovey publication, exposed the truth about Meghan's behavior in Montecito as well. But look, let's move on in our countdown to number 22. And it is the moment, sorry to be rude, but it is the moment where Kay Burley seemed to climax on Sly News after realising that Labour had won a landslide. This is the most extraordinary piece of broadcasting. Watch.
Oh, whoa. Oh my God. Oh. Yeah, you can see his face in just a second. You can see how Andy has reacted.
Brilliant.
A Labour landslide.
I mean, Alex Phillips, I'm not exaggerating, right? That, I mean, she is meant to be an impartial news presenter presenting the election coverage for the off-communist regulated Sly News, and she literally saw the exit poll result and seemed to orgasm.
Yeah, that was gross. I don't ever want to have to hear that again. I'm going to have harrowing dreams tonight. Thank you very much. What a great way to start 2025 with that image. No, this is the problem. All the media, the legacy media, really wanted a Labour government. They didn't hold them to account before the election. The Tories were dreadful, awful. They'd spun this narrative of how evil they were, how chaotic they were, which, you know, they were. But they never asked a tough question of Sir Keir Starmer. Now Labour's in power. They seem unable to do that because in order to hold Sir Keir Starmer to account, they've also got to admit that they got it wrong themselves in the whole run-up to that election. But, you know, this is why the people are leaving the mainstream media in droves. I think one of the reasons Kay Burley has lasted so long at Sly News is because I think that sound that she's making there is quite familiar to a number of people also at that channel. But, you know, so people suggest. But, you know, the mainstream media is over, isn't it? The legacy media is over. People are increasingly deserting it. And this isn't because people like Elon Musk are having a laugh and, you know, feeding us a load of fake news and brainwashing us. It's because actually the existence of other platforms and the sharing of information have made us realize quite how played we have been for decades by these channels.
Big time, big time. Well, look, apologies, Alex Phillips, but come on. We've got to listen just once more. Just once.
Oh, oh, oh my God.
You can see Ruth's face in just a second. You can see how Andy has reacted.
Brilliant.
A Labour landslide.
Alex Armstrong. At least they're not really trying to hide it anymore.
No, I mean, I don't know if they ever were actually, Dan, but they certainly weren't there, to say the least. You know, her, Beth Rigby, others at Sky News, they have a lot to answer for the reason we're in this mess we are today. And we've seen them all come out. I mean, Beth Rigby recently, I mean, it was a few months ago, should I say, when Starmer first took office, has said that in an interview she did with him that she was terrified of him. He was angry. He was angry with her. I mean, what's going on here? You know, have they really had so much hatred for the Conservative Party and politicians like Nigel Farage that they forgot to do their jobs? And now they're suffering. Sky News are going to suffer dramatically. Even GB News are beating them in the ratings at the moment, which should say something to Sky News. But Kay Burley, unfortunately, is one of those people. She tries to do a little bit of what Piers Morgan does, where she swings where she thinks the country is going to be, and she tries to sail with the winds rather than actually have some morals and some values. And unfortunately, that's going to come back and bite them, all of them, on Sky News on the backside.
Indeed. I mean, I don't think Sky News are long for this world. I really don't. They only have guaranteed funding for a couple more years. Concast, and yes, I did say con rather than Comcast. That's a Trump thing. They're getting rid of MSNBC, their hard left network in the US, and I don't think Sly News is long for this world. And I will not at all mourn its departure. And number 21, though, on the list of the worst of 2024 was Channel 4's decision to launch a vile hit piece against the Hollywood actor Kevin Spacey, despite the fact that this man had been cleared by juries, by courts on both sides of the Atlantic. He decided to give Outspoken his first interview. Watch.
Starts, dear Mr. Spacey, I'm writing to you in order to give you a fair opportunity to reply to statements that we intend to broadcast in a two-part documentary that will be broadcast on Channel 4 on the 6th and 7th of May 2024. Please respond in writing by no later than Monday the 29th of April. So if I've got this right, Kevin, they spent nearly 2 years on this hit piece and they think a fair opportunity is 7 days?
Yeah, and you haven't even got to the good part. These accusations date back to 1976, which is 48 years
of Kevin
ago.
Spacey.
I mean, you have to realize that it took me in the rap case nearly a year to find evidence that proved that he'd lied about this encounter he claimed he had with me, an encounter that never happened. And that was allegedly to have occurred 31 years prior.
And the thing is, Alex Armstrong, Kevin Spacey, and I found him very compelling and very honest. He's not trying to say that all of his behavior was necessarily completely morally upright, but he didn't break the law. And there are a lot of these accusers in the Channel 4 hit piece, and I call them accusers, by the way, not victims, who admitted that they were completely part of it, or they agreed to take money from Spacey, and it was this thing of having regrets after the fact and then trying to ruin this guy's life. I just feel like there is no man who has lost more, but also proven himself now in different legal systems on both sides of the Atlantic. What more do people want?
Well, you know, unfortunately today, Dan, we have trial by social media before trial before the courts. And that's the biggest issue we have in our society, in my opinion, because it really does mean that someone's life is destroyed publicly by pundits and everyone else online before they have a right to trial, a right to defend themselves. And the media have done the most awful, awful, awful things to poor Kevin. I mean, as you said, he's not a beaming beacon of righteousness and good. He has admitted he's made mistakes, and I think that he actually should be applauded for saying that he's, you know, openly coming out and saying, I did make mistakes, I wasn't perfect. But Robbie Williams summed this up brilliantly. This is a man who has also been attacked in vulgar ways by the press over the years. He says we have to forgive people for what they did in the 80s, 90s, 70s, whatever it was, even the early 2000s, because times have changed. What people believe to be the right and good of the day is not the same as it is in the present day. You've got to look back on the past and forgive people who speak in a certain way, who've behaved in a certain way. And he's not saying we should excuse heinous acts like rape and things like that and assault. He's saying, but there are certain ways that we used to talk. I mean, like, look at all the things that have been tried to be cancelled in the last few years. We've lost great comedy. We lost Little Britain. Friends has been cancelled by this new generation. When are we going to get a grip? And we should have, I think we've lost something great in Kevin Spacey. I think he's a brilliant actor. I would love to see him make a comeback.
One of our best. And I think there are hopes now for a comeback, Alex Phillips. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because probably Kevin Spacey's only crime was being a deeply tormented man who knew he was gay but could never accept that. And so as a result, he would make approaches to guys who he thought would keep his secret, but he never forced himself on anyone.
Yeah, I remember watching part of that Channel 4 documentary and thinking, what's he actually done wrong here? Like the allegations like, oh, he came and sort of stood close to me while I was waiting to have an autograph. And that's like, really? Like there was just nothing really in it. But of course, despite him being a gay man, he otherwise fits their agenda, doesn't he? He's white. He's middle-aged. He hasn't got any sort of, extreme local accent. He wasn't dragged up from poverty. He's not gender fluid. He's not queer. And so he has to be taken down. There has to be a witch hunt against him. They don't care that there's a human at the end of all of this. What they care about is seen to be crusading on behalf of vulnerable people, on protecting victims the world over. That's the only thing that they care about because it makes them feel better about themselves. So many people on the left love finding victims because it makes them feel a bit better because they think, oh, I'm a bit higher up in the pecking order than this poor soul down here. And they champion these people because they think they sort of shower themselves in moral rectitude. Well, I'm sorry. It's bullying, actually. It's bullying by another name because when you go after someone like Kevin Spacey, who's done absolutely nothing wrong because you want to shine a sort of virtuous light upon yourself. You've got a problem, not him.
Big time. Big time. Couldn't have put it better myself. Oh, Alex and Alex, I love you too. Thank you both so much, by the way, for being such a big part of Outspoken in our first year. Alex, I adore your Substack. That's what she said. I honestly think it is so brilliant. You are having the types of conversations that the mainstream media just refuse to have. I implore everyone to sign up. I signed up on day one. I haven't regretted it for one moment. And I reckon it's going to make a real splash, this Substack, in 2025. And Alex Armstrong, your voice just gets louder by the day. One of our biggest influencers now on X. And I think it's fascinating when you look at what happened during the US election. We've seen these sort of commentators emerge organically from outside the mainstream media space via social media. And I think you and Chris Rose and a couple of others are doing just absolutely brilliant work. And, you know, we will hopefully kick off this revolution, right, in 2025. So thank you both so much. Yeah, bring it on. Exactly. But you can get back to bed now, Alex Armstrong.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. And thank you, of course, for your support all during 2024. I'm so excited, actually. I am so excited about what the next 12 months brings here on Outspoken. And I am on Substack as well. Absolutely would love you to sign up. www.outspoken.live is the address. You can subscribe completely for free, but if you do want to support what we're doing here on Outspoken, there is the option for a monthly paid membership, or you can pay annually too at a cheaper price, and you will get access to our uncancelled after show, which returns Monday to Friday in a couple of weeks. Actually, we're back in 2 weeks for the after show, plus obviously my exclusive reporting, the columns, we have live chats, and as I said with Alex, it is a really, really thriving place. Matt Goodwin's there, Constantine Kissin is there. It is going to, Anne Widdecombe now, Jacob Rees-Mogg, so political figures too. And most importantly, Substack is a safe space, free of censorship, which is obviously, given everything we've been speaking about, incredibly important. So www.outspoken.live. But we continue the countdown of the worst of 2024 tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. Happy New Year.